Injured Gazans are brought to a hospital in Rafah as Israel continues to strike the crowded southern Gaza city. On Friday, the U.S. State Department weighed in on Israel's war conduct with a report to Congress that says it's reasonable to assess there are possible Israeli violations of international humanitarian law. But the U.S. has not determined whether a violation occurred and is still investigating.
Those questions are something that we continue to look at and have not reached any determination.
The report also says that while Israel has the tools to mitigate civilian harm, the high civilian death toll has raised questions as to whether the Israeli military is using the tools effectively. While Israel did initially withhold humanitarian assistance, according to the report, Israel is not currently restricting aid after a warning to Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu from President Joe Biden in April. Biden mandated the report with the National Security Memo, NSM-20, in February to assess whether allies, including Israel, follow U.S. and international law when using American weapons. The report concludes the U.S. does not have enough information to verify whether American weapons were used in unlawful military action, even with human rights groups providing input based on their on-the-ground experience.
We identified some specific cases where U.S.-made weapons were identified. And we expected that the State Department would conclude that there have been violations of international humanitarian law and that would lead to some sort of action. Reading the report, it looks like there have been some conclusions that there likely could have been some inconsistent use with international humanitarian law, but it doesn't look like they're actually going to change any practice.
Some lawmakers have pushed for more oversight, as there's currently no government mechanism to monitor how American weapons are used.
What we call end-use monitoring is an unfortunate misnomer that is basically just checking if a munition is in the hands of the designated end user, rather than how that end user is using those munitions. So it's for this reason that NSM-20 was very reliant on humanitarian and documentary organizations to submit credible allegations of abuses of U.S. weapons, because the U.S. government does not have a statutory authority going to be regularly tracking that.
Earlier this week, the Biden administration paused a shipment of 3,500 large bombs to Israel. The suspension was welcomed by progressives in Biden's Democratic Party.
The law is extremely clear. If there's credible evidence of gross human rights abuses, aid must stop.
But criticized by Republican lawmakers,
Hamas wins if it survives in Rafah. And Joe Biden has threatened to withhold weapons from Israel for fighting in Rafah. Therefore, Joe Biden objectively favors a Hamas victory over Israel.
Meanwhile, pro-Palestinian protests continue in campuses across the U.S. Patsy Widakuswara, VOA News, Washington.